There's trouble in Tuscaloosa. Kalen DeBoer keeps moving himself closer to the hot seat. It would have been an exaggeration to say before the season that Alabama's second-year coach was facing the hot seat. But what about now? After another loss, this one in the season opener at Florida State. We will discuss today on this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered, our podcast from the USA Today Network. I'm Blake Toppmeyer alongside John Adams. John was covering the Syracuse, Tennessee game on Saturday. I was up at Columbus for Texas losing to Ohio State. But John, I'm sure like I was, you were monitoring from afar the Alabama debacle in Tallahassee. Before we get into the Kalen DeBoer situation, just your impressions of what you saw from Alabama. To me, it's just truly stunning to see a team that built its brand on physicality and winning at the line of scrimmage to just be continually pushed around and loss after loss now.
Yeah, that was the thing, Blake, that stood out. It wasn't just that Alabama lost. It was the way it lost, to be just overwhelmed. In preseason, Lindy's preseason football magazine ranked Alabama's offensive line as the number one unit in the country. If that's true, then Florida State's defensive front should be sent immediately to the College Football Hall of Fame right now. Just induct them en masse, every one of those guys, because they absolutely dominated. And I know last season, Florida State's 2-10 team, I know that record was an aberration. Florida State's got too much money, too much tradition. It'll be good. But the way it whipped Alabama play after play, just all game long. Ty Simpson, I didn't know what to expect from him starting for Alabama, his first game at quarterback. I still don't know, because Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen couldn't have saved Alabama against Florida State. It was just overwhelmed.
Yeah, absolutely. And overwhelmed, I think, also applies to Alabama's 3 regular season losses. Well, frankly, you could throw in the Michigan loss last year as well, although the defense played okay in that game. The offensive line was overwhelmed. I mean, really, the Tennessee loss, the Vanderbilt loss, the Oklahoma loss last year, and then the defense, or excuse me, the offense and the loss to Michigan in the bowl game. Alabama was overwhelmed up front, I think, in all those games, or overmatched at the very least. And now we're seeing this again. And you're right with Ty Simpson, John. It was hard to get a great read on him. I thought it was sort of an average performance for him. But like you say, it was hard to evaluate. But what did stand out to me is we heard all preseason this narrative sort of floating around Alabama that Ty Simpson did not need to be a superstar in the mold of Tua Tagovailoa or Bryce Young. What he needed to be was steady-handed and just a dependable quarterback, almost an elevated game manager, so to speak, and let his supporting cast on both sides of the ball go to work for him. Well, that's a great narrative in April, when you're trying to convince people that Alabama is going to dial back the clock to the early days of the Nick Saban dynasty, when they had these like upgraded game manager quarterbacks, good quarterbacks, but not guys of Bryce Young's caliber. But that narrative is dependent on you having a really good supporting cast. Well, what we saw in week 1, at least, Ty Simpson is going to have to be a superstar, because his supporting cast, it's not like the Saban heyday when they had guys like Greg McElroy and Jake Coker at quarterback winning national championships.
Game manager, he needs to be a survivor.
Yeah.
I mean, every play, it's as though his career is on the line. I thought on one play he would get broken in half. He proved he could take a punch, to use a boxing term, but yeah, you're right. And see, that was another narrative, was Jalen Milroe didn't fit Kalen DeBoer's offense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we heard that and we knew that, but he was a talented guy, ended up being a 3rd-round draft pick, just incredible athlete who could make something out of nothing. But Ty Simpson would be better suited for what Kalen DeBoer wants to do. Operate from the pocket, go through your progressions, hit the right receiver, that kind of thing, and be accurate and smart with the football. No, this offense that I saw desperately needs Jalen Milroe. And now I look back and think, if not for Jalen Milroe, where would that team have been last year? You make a great point, and I didn't really think about this watching the game, but that has been a theme. We hear how good Alabama is up front, and we see these defensive fronts come in there and just kick it around. Go back to that Oklahoma game with everything on the line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a playoff berth is waiting on Alabama. Just take care of business against the mediocre Oklahoma team. But Oklahoma's defensive front was not mediocre, and it dominated Alabama's offensive line.
Yeah, and Tennessee, another good defensive front.
Yes.
Alabama couldn't get anything going
Right.
in that game. And even Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was the more physical team in that loss for Alabama and Nashville last year. So it is becoming a theme. And this, I think it is important to say that this didn't start necessarily the day Kalen DeBoer got into town, because I thought Alabama's physicality and dominance at the line of scrimmage was already starting to wane at the end of the Nick Saban era, but the situation has gotten demonstrably worse. It was starting to slip at the end of the Saban era, but it is now in a state of free fall. I mean, Alabama does not have that intimidation factor anymore, because we've seen too many times it gets outplayed at the line of scrimmage, and here again by Florida State. And it's, as you say, John, Florida State's record last year of going 2-10. I mean, that's almost irrelevant in this era of college football. They reloaded in the transfer portal. This is a Florida State program that lives and dies by the portal. It hit it big in 2023, then it whiffed last season. Part of the problem was they got the quarterback wrong in DJU. There were other problems, but that was part of it. And so now they've got Thomas Castellanos in there who talks trash to Alabama in the preseason. And we were wondering, I think both you and I were wondering, is this smart? And it's, as I wrote on Sunday, I think he was underselling it when he was talking that trash. He was holding back talking that trash in the preseason based on the way this looked on Saturday. So, and that's telling to me, John. Alabama is now the program that you can talk trash to and get away with it. I mean, imagine talking trash to Alabama at the height of their dynasty and being able to get away with that, when the game rolled around. That wouldn't have happened. But now, not only can you talk trash to Alabama, you can go out and beat them by multiple touchdowns and just absolutely dominate them. And so that brings us to Kalen DeBoer, who has now lost 5 of his first 14 games, and year one's over. Whatever grace you get in year one, which you don't get a lot of grace at Alabama, but whatever few ounces you might get, that's long been used up. And here he is losing his season opener at the start of year 2. And it's not just that he's been losing games, he's been losing to unranked teams. Now, Tennessee was an exception, but go back to last season, lost to Vanderbilt, lost to Oklahoma. Those were 2 teams that finished the regular season at 6-6. Now he loses to what we think is a pretty improved Florida State team, but nonetheless, Alabama was a 2-touchdown favorite against the unranked Seminoles, and they got whooped. I think, John, we try to be pretty realistic with the hot seat on this show. I mean, we won't shy away from hot seat conversations by any means when we feel like a coach is getting close to it, but we're not going to say someone is on the hot seat, I don't think, if they're truly not. Maybe I'm giving us too much credit, but do you feel like Kalen DeBoer now is starting to get close to that terrain? Because coming into the season, I would have said, no, this is an important season for him, but he's not on the hot seat. What about now, though, after a loss to Florida State?
Harsh reality for Alabama. It's not Texas A&M.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it can write a $76 million check. It does, like A&M did for, I may be wrong, a few million on that to Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, you're right. And Kalen DeBoer's buyout at the end of the season, I think, would be $60 million. So you're getting a little bit of a discount, but not much. $60 million would still be the second biggest buyout in college football history.
No, I don't think Alabama can write that check. I think it's got to stick with Kalen DeBoer. One of the things that I applaud us on, and you have to admit, we are we never fall short of giving ourselves credit when things go right. I think that's
Somebody's got to do it.
yeah, it's a consistent theme of our podcast.
Uh-huh.
But you know, we've we've both thought Kalen DeBoer was a pretty good hire, uh, and his track record suggests as much. However, we're always quick to jump off a bandwagon when needed, and that's not putting him on. We don't put everybody on the hot seat. I wasn't ready to fire. I'm on record. I wasn't ready to fire Ryan Day when he lost to Michigan last year. I kind of look at that he wins 87% of his games or whatever. Yeah, we probably should keep him around for a season or two. But here's the problem I have right now for Kalen DeBoer. He's what he's doing is not working, and what he's done everywhere else has worked. It's kind of like a heavyweight fighter who's never who's never lost and goes out into the ring and feels invincible. Well, Kalen DeBoer might not feel invincible, but he feels very confident in what he does. That this talent may wane at times and it may be an upgrade at other times, but his system, he's got to believe in his system. I think that belief has to be shaken a bit. Now he won't say that, of course, but just watching him in that game, he looked like somebody watching something he had no idea he would see. And I think that can be jarring. A coach, when a coach has to question himself and say, okay, what am I? You don't want to panic, but you don't want to keep going down a road that leads to a dead end.
Mm-hmm.
So he's gotta take a really hard look at this. And you brought up the thing about the quarterback. That with this team and behind that offensive line, I better get a more athletic quarterback in there.
Yeah. And he's got Keelan Russell, his 5-star freshman, waiting in the wings now. I don't think Kalen DeBoer planned on going to him in September of Keelan Russell's true freshman season, but all options ought to be on the table. I'm not saying he needs to trigger a quarterback change in week 2, but what I am saying is, yeah, you better consider every possibility and do some soul searching after that performance in week 1. You can't just keep trotting out there in the same format and expect the results to be different, because that wasn't a fluky result. It's as you say earlier. I mean, they got whipped, and we've been seeing this, for over a year now from Alabama. And I think you're right, John, that hot seat, that's a buzzy word to throw around. Alabama fans might wish Kalen DeBoer were on the hot seat at this point, but I don't think he is, because that $60 million buyout offers him some protection. And this also is a new day in college athletics, where athletic departments realize they have to fork over $20 million a year to athletes. And that does factor into the equation. The buyouts keep getting higher, and so do the costs of paying the athletes. So, and as you say, Alabama is not Texas A&M. Being able to say, name the price, will stroke the check. So I don't think he's on the hot seat. But what I do think is the bandwagon's empty. There's nobody on the bandwagon. It's broken down. It's been left in the dust, and that is in need of repair. So that let's transition here, John, and get into sort of a kind of a resetting the table stock report after week 1 of the SEC. There were a lot of a lot of irrelevant games, but there were a handful of, I thought, pretty notable results. I think it's fair to say stock down on Alabama. That goes without much elaboration. But I'm wondering, elsewhere throughout the SEC, you saw Texas struggle on offense, Arch Manning struggle at Ohio State. You were covering the Tennessee victory and Joey Aguilar's coming out party, at least in the SEC, against Syracuse. LSU got a huge win. South Carolina, important victory. Has your perceptions or evaluations or what you thought of teams coming into the season changed for anyone other than the obvious elephant in the room being Alabama?
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of things that totally shocked other than the Alabama game. There was nothing stood out as a shocker to me. I thought LSU had the best roster in the country going into the season, and
Mm-hmm.
it certainly showed that against Clemson in a game that really wasn't as close as the final score. LSU's built a dominant defense to go along with a prolific offense, and there was a dreadful call in that game that cost LSU a touchdown and made that game closer than it was. But so LSU was kind of right on target. Texas, bad game for Arch Manning. I thought he would be better. I, I, I didn't think Steve Sarkisian helped him enough. He was a runner last year. Well, I would have made him a runner some in that game too. I'm not saying he has to carry the ball 15 times a game, but let him use his legs. I mean, that was supposed to be his calling card, and what separated him from his uncles art from his uncles Peyton and Eli. He was more like his grandfather Archie Manning. So I think Texas will be fine. I see a lot of talent on. I just didn't like Texas's approach. I was kind of baffled by that. I know Sarkisian's a good coach, but particularly in the red zone, he's got a history now. When you look back at those two playoff games, when the games were right there for him in Texas against Washington and in the 23 season, and then going back last year against Ohio State, game turning play. I mean, it's ready to win that game, and then disaster strikes in the red zone. So that kind of sticks out now. I think he might want to revisit what he's doing there. The other teams, South Carolina, I think is overrated, and that I think
And
it's
that opinion didn't change for you after beating
no,
Virginia Tech. You're holding serve there. Yeah.
yeah, because uh, yeah, I love Lenore Sellers, but it to me it missed Rocket Sanders at running back, and its offensive line. I don't know about it. I think that was I don't know if it's as good as it was last year. It only rushed for 119 yards in that game. I think that's a problem because its receiving core might be okay, but it's not great. There were some drop passes, so no, it's I'm Ole Miss. I expected Ole Miss to be good, and I expected Austin Simmons to be good at quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Those
and
were
we didn't get a great evaluation on them in week
I
one,
I
playing
know,
playing an
but
overmatched opponent.
he looked a part of another Lane Kiffin quarterback. So
What
I'm
about, what
just
about Tennessee, John? Did you change? I mean, because I think am I correct in saying your evaluation for them coming into the season was maybe about 8-4, 9-3? Did,
yeah,
did that change after seeing Joey Aguilar and that wide receiver group go hog wild against Clemson? I know we don't think highly, or not against Clemson,
Syracuse. Yeah,
the
good
other
thing
team
they
in
weren't
orange.
playing Clemson. Yeah,
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
no. I picked Tennessee to go 9-3 mainly because of a very accommodating schedule. I think it's got the easiest schedule in the SEC, and now I think that schedule might be even easier. I actually can see Tennessee winning 10 games and making the playoff now.
I can too. I wouldn't have put them in the playoff picture. You could have given me probably 5 or 6 brackets that I could have filled out. And I don't think I would have had them in any of them. I thought they had a high floor because of the schedule and because of Josh Heupel's history. He's a very high floor coach. He doesn't have bad seasons. But I just thought with the quarterback transition and some of the departures they had from last year's playoff team, that they would not have a playoff ceiling. But I am starting to reevaluate that. And I know we're at risk for week one overreaction, and I know Syracuse is not a great team, but boy, with Josh Heupel's history developing quarterbacks, it's really really strong. And then you see Joey Aguilar go out and do in his first game what he did. I think I'm like you. I'm not changing my evaluation for a lot of teams in the SEC. I'm holding steady on South Carolina. It's good they won that game, but I don't think Virginia Tech's particularly good, and I didn't think South Carolina overwhelmed them. But one of the teams I am changing my evaluation on, I think a little bit, is Tennessee. I'm bumping my outlook for the Vols up a bit, and I think playoff could be a possibility now for this team. Getting to 10-2 with that schedule, based on what we saw on Saturday, I think that's on the table.
Yeah, I thought it's curious to me that Josh Heupel always goes for the big arm quarterbacks. He got Joe Milton. He got Nico Yamaleava. Joey Aguilar has a good arm, but it's not going to put that Elway cross on receivers.
Mm.
And Joe Milton hurt receivers with his throws. He was dangerous. But Aguilar looked more confident, more comfortable in Josh Heupel's offense than either one of those guys did making their first start or ever, really. He looked very comfortable. And keep in mind, he took a cram course in this offense. He wasn't there for the spring. He came in post-spring from UCLA. Yeah, I think he fits this offense better. So that's part of my higher evaluation for Tennessee. I also have a stronger favorability toward Auburn after watching it beat Baylor.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. I've upped my outlook for Auburn as well. I thought they had the opportunity this year with their roster upgrades, new quarterback, and a pretty good schedule. Not the easiest in the conference, but on the better end of things. I thought there was an opportunity, but going out there and seeing them decisively beat Baylor, that has made me a little bit more bullish on Auburn. I agree.
Well, it was the way they won. If you go back to when Hugh Freeze had the pinnacle of his career was at Ole Miss. He did well at Liberty, but he had Bo Wallace at quarterback. Not a great quarterback, but a strong runner.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jackson Arnold's an even better runner, the transfer from Oklahoma. Now, you can't run him as much as Hugh Freeze did in that win over Baylor and expect him to hold up for the entire season. This guy was taking hits. He looks more like when he runs, he doesn't look anything like a quarterback. He looks like a pure running back. Auburn's offensive line, I thought, was outstanding. And I compare it in state. There's Alabama with this highly rated offensive line just being beat to a pulp by Florida State. And watching Auburn, on the other hand, its offensive line took charge of the game. Not that Baylor has a great defensive front. Nonetheless, it took charge of that game and really controlled that game. I think Hugh Freeze feels really comfortable with how the offense personnel fits his scheme. And I also think, keep in mind, you didn't really see it that much in that game. Auburn has really almost elite wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to respect that if your defense, which is going to create running lanes for those running backs and for Jackson Arnold. So I'm higher on Auburn than I was before the season kicked off.
The one thing I still wonder about Auburn, and we didn't have to see it in the Baylor game because they didn't have to do this. If Jackson Arnold has to beat you with his arm, can he do that? I mean, he looked great running it, and that's all they needed to beat Baylor. But if they get into some big games where they need to make some critical throws, I agree with you. They have great wide receivers. Can he make the critical throws? If they can't get him going in the run game as much, if a defense is able to take that away, will he be able to make the critical throws? But I agree with you. I think we're in alignment. Our stock is up a little bit on Tennessee and Auburn. We're holding steady on South Carolina. You were already really high on LSU. I was pretty high on LSU, not quite as much as you were, but pretty high on them. I'm even higher on them now. I thought they played excellent against Clemson. The final score said that was a 7-point result, but LSU outplayed Clemson by more than that 7-point margin. The defense showed a mean streak, but they played smart too. They made sure that game didn't get away from them at the end. We can think back to some games LSU has squandered in the past several years, and as Clemson's driving at the end of the fourth quarter with a chance to tie it, you think, "Oh, here we go again, LSU." No, that defense stood tall and played. They played great throughout 4 quarters, if not for that controversial call and LSU. I believe they fumbled once driving into Clemson territory. Right? I mean, this could have been a 2 or 3 score decision in favor of LSU. And Brian Kelly, John, he is riding high, throwing out shade to people left and right. Have you seen any of those AI videos, John, that kind of go around on the internet and you fake somebody's voice and it makes it, you see this fake press conference? Well, I was seeing Brian Kelly's press conference or these video clips come out Tuesday and hearing these quotes from Brian Kelly, I thought, oh, this has to be an AI fake.
Uh-huh.
He didn't actually say this, right? No, he actually said it. He was letting Dabo Swinney have some. Dabo Swinney at his press conference said he would grade LSU as 65. I think that's out of 100, and grade his team a 58 in that season opener. And Brian Kelly's response was, quote, "I thought we dominated them in the second half." And he went on to say, maybe Dabo didn't see the second half, which might be the case, Brian Kelly said. I mean, that is just rubbing salt in the wound, but I think appropriately so. I mean, anybody grading LSU 65 for that game like Dabo
Oh my
did,
gosh.
I mean, maybe Brian Kelly's right. Maybe Dabo didn't see the second half or just gave himself amnesia so he would forget it.
No, they just they manhandled Clemson in that second half. And I'm kind of like you. I'm thinking, yeah, this is the kind of game LSU has lost in previous openers under Brian Kelly. Um, and as I mentioned earlier, got a horrible call on what should have been a touchdown, but bounced back from that. It never looked shaken uh, by what Clemson was doing. And I think Dabo Swinney it's almost as though he's already lobbying for a playoff berth by saying, "Well, we only got a 58, we flunked, and that's the reason LSU. It's not LSU's not that good. We just had an awful game for us." Coaches tend to do that. They look inward and say, "Yeah, no," but because you don't want to admit, which in this case was the obvious, LSU's just better, and
Mm-hmm.
LSU was better in that game.
Absolutely. I think LSU is ranked too low in the polls this week. I think they should be number 2 or 3 after that dominating performance. Ohio State should be 1. You beat Clemson, or I keep bringing Clemson up for every team that played poorly on Saturday. But Ohio State beats Texas. That's fine. Ohio State defending champions. I think they should be number 1. But LSU, I think, has a great case to be number 2 in the polls. They're not. We know a lot of poll voters are not willing to move teams down if they win, and so Georgia won, Penn State won against overmatched opponents. But I don't know about you, but I think I'd have LSU in that number 2 position. I mean, not only did they win, they won on the road against the previously number 4 ranked team in the AP poll, number 6 in the coaches poll. I think LSU is being not that it matters. I mean, these early season polls, who
No.
cares? But I think they should be number 2.
Well, I think LSU should be a number 1, but I thought that in preseason. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, certainly give Ohio State a lot of credit, particularly with its defensive games plan against Texas, but it was playing at home. I just think it was a more substantial win. LSU going on the road, one of the toughest places to play in the country. Which reminds me, every time I watch a Clemson game and I see the players run down that ramp into the stadium, golly, I wouldn't risk somebody falling. I mean, think about it. That could be like a massive traffic pileup if one of those players fell running down that incline. I wouldn't risk that if I were a coach.
And Dabo really gets sprinting down that hill. Maybe that's
Oh,
why he
he
can't
loves
remember the
it.
second half. He just
Yeah.
ran out of oxygen and blacked out.
he he looks like he's on a natural high when he's running down that thing. Like he genuinely feels as though, you know what, I'm fast enough to play right now in our secondary.
Uh-huh. Yeah, unfortunately, Dabo, he burned his best moment in the pregame running running down that hill, and LSU saved their best moments for the second half. I want to unpack a little bit more your thoughts on Texas, John. That was really one of the big narratives of the weekend was Arch Manning. This wasn't his first career start, but for a lot of people, they thought it was his first career start because the two games he started last year were against overmatched opponents. This was his first road start. This was his first start against a ranked team. And it's interesting because immediately after the game, during the game, everybody was piling on Arch. And then I thought the narrative overcorrected on Sunday and Monday. You saw a lot of analysts trying to prop him up, saying, oh, he didn't play that bad. Actually looked pretty good. No, I didn't think he looked pretty good. He made a couple good throws toward the end of that game. But I think this falls into the category of multiple things being true at once. The first truth is Arch Manning did not play good in that game. The second truth, which you've already hit on, is Steve Sarkisian did not do enough to help Arch Manning. And I think the third truth is no, Arch did not play well. Sarkisian did not coach well, but that does not mean that all is lost for Arch Manning and Texas. Let's not pretend that he played well. He didn't, but I'm not ready to write off this guy as a bust after one game on the road against the defending national champions who will be in the national championship hunt, I believe, again this year in Ohio State with a really good defense. So he has to play better. Sark has to coach better, but I'm not ready to throw Texas into the trash heap based off one 7-point loss to Ohio State. And there were some good things from Texas in this game. The quarterback wasn't one of them, but its defense played well. Its young, new look offensive line, I thought, played pretty well. Its run game was really good. CJ Baxter back from injury. So if Arch gets going, and I think he can, I think Texas is going to be fine. What was your, I guess, takeaways coming out of that?
Yes, Arch was a disappointment in that so much was expected of him. It would be hard for anybody to live up to those expectations. But watching him against Ohio State, he looked, yeah, he missed open receivers, and that's something you don't expect to see from an elite quarterback. I think part of that was he felt very unsure.
Mm-hmm.
And I give Matt Patricia, former NFL defensive coordinator, credit for that. And I give Ohio State credit for maybe executing a complex defensive scheme. Maybe it wasn't that complex, but it was complex enough to make Arch Manning really uncomfortable. I don't think he was sure that what he was seeing was right.
He looked jittery and
Yes.
yeah, unsure is a good word for it, uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
and I think and Sarkisian said this afterward, and you hit on it too, John. They should have incorporated him more in the run game in the first half. Now I know that's dangerous. You got your 5-star quarterback out there. Oh, what if he gets hurt in week one? I get that, but you got to take some risks if you want to win some games. And that's one thing he does well. And you heard Sarkisian say it afterwards. He admitted he probably messed up there and not dialing up some more quarterback runs in the first half and letting him do something he does well and take a few hits even could have settled Arch Manning down. It's weird to think about, but sometimes, you get in there, you get physical, you get popped with a tackle and that almost calms you down a little bit and you say, "Hey, I can handle this. I'm in it now."
Run a few option plays. Um, get him involved in other things and take the pressure off his throwing arm.
Mhm.
Um, I thought Texas showed me something in that it held its own against Ohio State at the line of scrimmage,
Yeah.
both sides of the ball. Very few teams will do that. So even though Texas suffered some significant losses in both lines, I think it's fine there. And I think it's 3 deep at running back. And when you have a good ground game, the ground game becomes even more effective when you have your quarterback running some. So I think Texas, I mean, I thought going in, Texas is a playoff contender. I think it still is. I think we saw 2 games, 4 teams in the first weekend that we will see in December in the playoffs.
You think Clemson
Clemson,
still gets there?
LSU, Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, Texas.
Okay. Good. I know this is going outside SEC terrain,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
what about Miami Notre Dame, John? Do you think both those teams get there, or Are you not all in on Miami yet? Are you got concerns about Notre Dame? I liked Miami more than you did, I think, in the preseason,
You do?
and I'm not fading them at all after that performance. As for Notre Dame, boy, that's going to be a big one a week from now in week 3 against Texas A&M. They lose to Texas A&M in week 3. It might be curtains for Notre Dame this season.
When we were picking our 12-team playoff field, we took turns doing it last week, and afterward you texted me. This is behind the scenes stuff,
Uh-huh.
uh, as if anybody cares. But you text me, we left out Notre Dame. And I said, I know.
Yeah,
I did
yeah.
that with full intent. I didn't.
It's like when you pick Southern California, and I'd already picked Miami, knowing Southern California and Miami was on the schedule. It's like, well, there goes Notre Dame, I guess. And well, they've already lost to Miami. Maybe they lose to Southern California, and we were yeah, I guess I thought when I was going into that podcast last week, I thought I'm going to take Notre Dame for the playoff, but then I took Miami, you took USC, and they just sort of fell off the radar during our back and forth. But kind of stumbling through it. It sounds like you intentionally left them off. They were on
Yes, I
my
did. I
they
did.
were
And
yeah they were on my board going into it, and then after Miami and Southern Cali, just somehow fell off. But
well, did watching Notre Dame, did do you think any differently about the Texas A&M game in South Bend in week 3?
well, I wasn't overwhelmed by Texas A&M's performance, and they got the job done, but they were just fine. Um, I know you get sucked into Texas A&M's gravitational,
Admittedly, yes.
yeah, get sucked into their gravitational pull about every June and July. I at one time did that. I'm trying to stay out of that pull the last few years, so I'm not overboard on Texas A&M. That game is at Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame can get off the mat and win that one. And at that point, they're still in the hunt for the playoff. But yeah, if they lose to Texas A&M, which is possible, I think they're out. So I wouldn't be in panic mode yet if I'm a Notre Dame fan. I would hope that the coaching staff remembers that Jeremiah Love exists. He went a long time without getting the ball, which I don't understand that. All America candidate, Heisman candidate, really in the preseason at running back, and Notre Dame staff, which the national media just love to anoint as the best coaching staff that the Lord has ever created. That they didn't really have a good game in this opener, but that can be corrected. I mean, the good thing for Notre Dame was C.J. Carr showed some promise, so that was good. But yeah, I think I'm even higher on Miami than I was before, and I picked them to the playoff before. Now I'm doubling down on that playoff pick, but I haven't totally punted on Notre Dame. But I do think if I was an Irish fan, I'd be feeling some concern
Yeah,
for sure.
excuse me, but I thought Carson Beck was better at Miami than he was last season.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I thought he really we keep talking about quarterbacks looking comfortable or uncomfortable. I thought he looked comfortable in what Miami was asking him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And go back to last season when he threw 12 interceptions in a 6-game stretch. He just looked more at ease in that game. And we all know he has a good arm, very, very smooth release. So I don't trust Mario Cristobal.
No, I thought he was going to blow that with his conservative play calling at the end. It's like he put a lot of trust in a kicker being able to bang home a 48-yarder. More trust in this kicker than he did in his quarterback who'd play well all game.
Yeah,
Worked out. But.
I look for him to cost Miami a game, but in one game it can afford to lose. Yeah, it's going to be. I don't think it's as good as Clemson. It may come down to can the ACC get 2 teams in, and that there are a lot of variables that come into that.
Yeah. Before we get to our picks, John, just a sort of a word on this weekend. It's kind of a light weekend of games. The undercard is probably Arizona State at Mississippi State, Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech. The main bouts within the SEC this weekend would probably be from the rivalry factor. Kansas at Missouri in a rivalry that, quite frankly, dates to the Civil War. And I'm not saying just the Civil War time, like literally that rivalry dates to the Civil War. And that rivalry is being renewed for the first time since Missouri left the Big 12 for the SEC. So, really important game in Columbia Mo this weekend. And then the other big game, Michigan and Bryce Underwood, who looked pretty good in his first career start against an overmatched opponent, playing at Oklahoma. And I think what will be a very telling game for both those teams. I think we're going to find out a lot about whether Michigan and Oklahoma are playoff contenders or playoff pretenders. For Oklahoma, especially, knowing what awaits in the SEC schedule, I almost think this is a must-win game for Oklahoma's playoff prospects. I mean, mathematically, no, you could lose to Michigan and still make the playoff, but realistically, looking at that schedule, I find it hard to think that Oklahoma could lose on its home field to Michigan and then rebound and get through that schedule to the point that you'd make the playoff. Point being, if you can't beat Michigan on your home field, I don't think you're going to survive that schedule. But if they do beat Michigan, then I'm ready to put Oklahoma in the contender status. Just which of those two games, Missouri hosting Kansas or Michigan, Oklahoma, maybe more has your eye?
I like both those games, but it's the OU Michigan game. Every time I look at Oklahoma's schedule, I think of SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey writing those teams down and then just sort of chuckling devilishly at what he's doing to Oklahoma. So we'll see what Brett Venables thinks about this. I almost call him Brett again. We'll see what Brent
I
Venables.
thought you did. You kind of hedged your bets.
Well, it was
there
kind of
between
like
Brent and
Brent
Brett.
Brett. It kind of merged them together. I don't know what it was, but yeah, this is a game. I look at that schedule. Oklahoma to me could have playoff talent
Yeah.
and not even come close to the playoff. It's just really unfortunate. If you gave Oklahoma Texas a schedule, I think it could make the playoff. Uh, and if you gave Texas Oklahoma schedule, I don't think it could make the playoffs. So, but this is a game. I really like Brent Venables in this game going. He's a he's a really good defensive tactician. And I really like him going against a freshman quarterback. I think he will show Bryce Underwood, a talented guy, certainly, who did very well in his first game against an overmatched opponent. But I think Venables will create all kinds of problems for Bryce Underwood in that game. And if Oklahoma can't win this game, Brent Venables is good as gone.
Ooh, bold comment, but I don't know that
Look at
that's
that
in it.
schedule.
Yeah, I was say bold comment, but I think you're probably hitting the nail on the head there, John. That's a game I'll be covering on Saturday. I'm staying in Oklahoma City, John, and I've made a few trips to Oklahoma City over the years. I think it's one of the most underrated cities. We're talking like real cities, not like college towns and stuff like that, but actual cities. I think it's one of the more underrated cities out there. I really like Oklahoma City. It's got that kind of cross between, it's a Southwest feel, but it's almost a little bit Midwest vibes. I feel like with the people and the hospitality. But you feel like, I mean, you're the downtown there is very lively, good food scene, bar scene, but you almost feel like a tumbleweed could blow past you while you're in downtown Oklahoma City. I don't, and then you land at the airport. Right off the airport, you got the oil rigs going right there by the airport. I don't know. I'm kind of excited about this trip. I think Oklahoma City is really got a good place in my heart.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma is an underrated state. I love Oklahoma. I've stayed there. I've been there. Uh, I spent about three or 4 days in Tulsa last spring. I like Tulsa even more than Oklahoma City,
Oh
and
wow.
it's got a
Okay.
really nice downtown too. Yeah, I like that whole state. I think you mentioned Midwest and you mentioned Southwest. In fact, Oklahoma's cowboy country. Oklahoma State's called the Cowboys for a reason. You're in the West when you're in Oklahoma. I mean,
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Yeah, because it
yeah,
doesn't
and
feel. I mean, it doesn't really feel Midwestern. I just thought the people there
yeah,
seem a little Midwestern to me, and it's a little bit Southwestern, but not exactly. It's not. It's not Arizona or West Texas, and so it's like, what is this place? Yeah, it's cowboy country. You're right. You're right.
yeah, and you go. It's got a great cowboy museum there. I like old Western movies, and I really appreciated the display it had in that cowboy museum there in Oklahoma City. Um, and I just you go to Bartlettsville further north, you go to northeast, I guess, Bartlettsville, Oklahoma. You really get a feel for the folks there in that state. They're just very friendly. I really
Hmm.
enjoy that state. Uh,
I
I
need to
don't think
find me a saloon somewhere, and I can go busting through the saloon doors to sort of complete this picture of what we're
well,
talking about. Cowboys,
yeah, here's what I see for you on Friday night.
uh-huh.
You you find you a saloon, there'll be plenty of them there. You walk in there and find the biggest guy you see in there
Uh-oh.
and cold cock him. Just knock him out and just send a message to everybody in that bar.
Uh-huh.
You are not to be trifled with.
I just took a code of conduct training with the company, John, before we did this podcast. I don't think that cold
That
cocking the
wasn't that
biggest
didn't
guy
come
in the
up
bar.
and
It wasn't a question in the training that I wasn't
uh-huh.
specifically told I couldn't do that, but
Oh, we'll
might be
see.
a gray area at the very least. And I don't think
You're
that would
good
go.
there. Yeah.
Code of conduct aside, I don't think that would go well for me. I mean, maybe I could sucker punch him, but I think I'd be going down pretty shortly after that. Uh, all right. Well, you're going down in our picks contest, John. I got a one game lead on you after 1 week. I went 3-2. You went 2-3. We don't need to relive the results any further than that. As a reminder to our loyal listeners, John and I are doing our picks a little bit differently this year. We're presenting a 5-pack of picks. We can pick separate games if we want, same games if we want. The only rules are 4 of the 5 games have to involve an SEC team. So here's our 5-pack. You can look at it at a parlay if that's the way you want to see it. View it however you want. We're giving you our 5 picks to click. John, you want to bat lead off this week and serve up your 5 games you got there?
Yeah, I start off with a game that looks too good to be true, which usually means it isn't true. South Florida getting the line I saw was 17.5 points
That's right. Yep.
against Florida. I mean, I wonder, it makes me, Brian Kelly was wondering if Dabo Sweeney saw the second half of the LSU Clemson game. I wonder if the odds makers were watching that. I think it was Thursday night game between South Florida and Boise State. It was a total beatdown. It looked like Florida State versus Alabama. Uh, and Florida was playing Long Island, which I didn't even know had a football team, so I ignored that game. But South
Okay.
Florida beating those South Florida players, they're overwhelmed publicity wise by what happens at Florida in Gainesville. They will bring their A game against Florida. So I love getting that many points against the Gators.
All right. So you're taking South Florida and the points. How about the
Yes.
rest of your 5-pack?
Ole Miss. What's the line you saw on that? Is it 10 points now? 10?
Ole Miss. Who's the line on? Who's Ole Miss playing this weekend, John?
Kentucky.
Oh yeah, Kentucky. I believe that was 11 points. It's an 11-point line.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
been going up. I think it might have opened at 8.5 or 9, the first line I saw. I really like that game. In fact, if I could make a 2-team parlay and bet a lot of money on it, those first 2 would probably be my parlay.
10 and a
And I
half
know
is the current spread, John. You taking Ole Miss to cover the 10 and a half?
oh, yeah.
Oh
I
yeah.
think
Okay.
Lane Kiffin's got a lot of Steve Spurrier in him. And he's got an elephant-like memory bad bad days. And Kentucky, look what
Hmm.
Kentucky cost him last year. It cost him a playoff bid, and everybody was just agape. How can you lose to Kentucky? That's all he's been hearing. Kentucky's hitched his offense to Zach Calzada, and it makes me wonder if Mark Stoops realized that he had a college history before he went to established power like Incarnate Word. He was at Texas A&M, and he was at Auburn,
He
and
beat
he didn't.
Alabama, John.
Huh?
He beat Alabama at Texas A&M.
Yeah, I know he did. I
Okay.
know he did. Yeah.
All right. All
You
right, but
talk
still,
about
you're
aberrations. He was 10 of 23 against Toledo.
and
Okay.
walked away a winner. But you're given the
What?
10.5 points. All right,
Yeah.
next game in your 5-pack here.
Okay. I'll go with Oklahoma. We've talked about that game already.
You're
What's the
given the
line on
five
that?
5.5 points.
It's gone up to 5.5. Wow.
Yeah, Oklahoma's a
It
five
was
and a half.
2.5 to open. So
You're giving 5.5 points now to Michigan. Got a backup plan, or are you sticking with it?
well, let me pick a couple other games before I go to that then. I'll think about it while I'm picking. Multitask here. I'll take Texas minus 36.5. Is that the
Okay.
line or has it gone
That's the
up?
line. You're given the
Okay.
36.5 points. Texas hosting San Jose State in a get right game. Okay. Texas given the points.
And I will take LSU minus whatever it's giving against
LSU is giving
Louisiana
a
Tech.
boatload of points to Louisiana Tech. 37.5.
Yeah.
You'll give those 37.5.
Yeah. It's
All right. So
yeah.
it's all favorites all the time for you, John, except for South Florida. You're taking the 17.5 points, and your lock of the week to round out the 5-pack.
Now, can I get a lock? Can I do this doesn't count as my uh, I'm sorry, terminology's throwing me off here. I can pick I've got another game to pick, right? Are you giving me credit for the OU game? That's my
No,
five
you've
pack.
picked 4 games. You got USF, Ole Miss, Texas, and
Okay.
LSU. So
Well,
there's
I
your.
would pick for a fifth game. I'd pick OU.
Okay. So you're going to stick with OU, even though the line has.
Yeah, I'll stick with him. Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah,
right. So you're staying inside the SEC for this week's
yeah.
pick, taking
Mhm.
a lot of favorites, but you're giving or you're taking the points with USF. Okay. So there's John's 5-pack. He's taking USF and the points, and then he's taking to cover the spread Ole Miss, Oklahoma, LSU, and Texas. All right, John. I went 3-2 last week. I'd settle for another 3-2 week. I mean, I'm not going to get greedy based on my performance picking games, but here's my 5-pack. Like you, I'm taking Texas in the get right game against San Jose State. I think Steve Sarkisian will want to show that everything's fine with Arch Manning.
Mhm.
They'll pour it on. So I'll give the 36.5 points. I'm going to go the other direction from you on that USF Florida game. 17.5 points for USF seems too good to be true. I'm going to say it is too good to be true. I'm taking the home Gators and giving the 17.5 points. And Arkansas State at Arkansas, John. How much do I trust Butch Jones? Butch Jones and Arkansas State are getting 23.5 points against Arkansas. I don't trust Butch. I'm going with Arkansas, and I'm giving the 23.5 points. Not worried about Butch Jones and Arkansas State. An aforementioned rivalry game that's renewing for the first time in 14 years. Kansas at Missouri. Missouri is 6.5-point favorite for O'Field. Will be rocking. It's become a better atmosphere since Eli Drinkwitz has become the coach. Been kind of a tough place to play last few years, actually. I'd like Missouri to win in this game, but I think it's going to be a tight one. So I'm going to take on the spread here. I'm going to take Kansas and the 6.5 points. Missouri won a lot of close one-possession games last year. I think that narrative will hold true in this one. They'll win another one-possession game, but I'm going to take Kansas and those 6.5 points. For my lock of the week, John, I'm stepping outside of the SEC. My lock of the week is UNLV at home. Dan Mullen's 2-0. Hasn't looked great, but his running Rebs are 2-0, and now they're getting 2.5 points as the home team. They're the dog as the home team against Nico Iamaleava's UCLA Bruins. I don't know how late you stayed up on Saturday, but if you caught a glimpse of that UCLA game with Nico, UCLA stunk and Nico stunk. So
Well,
I'm taking UNLV in the points at home against UCLA.
um, yeah, I not only stayed up, I wrote a column on that game and to show the interest that Tennessee fans have in Nico Iamaleava, and they're no longer fans of his.
Mhm.
Uh, one of my editors told me that we got 18 subscriptions off that column.
Whew, that's a bonus check coming to you, John.
I'll be looking for it in the mail. Uh, and I'm sorry, but I really want to change one of my picks. I didn't know I could go outside the SEC on the lock.
Yeah, I've befuddled you with these new rules this
Yeah,
year.
you
I
see, I
know.
thought we picked 5 SEC games,
No, we
and
picked
then
4 SEC games and then a lock that can be outside the conference. So you want to dump that your Oklahoma
yeah,
pick and go with a different lock?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, because I want to go back. I want to dance with the one that brung me. I want to go back to Kent State
Who's Kent
against
State got this week?
Texas Tech.
Oh,
Texas Tech scored 67 points with a backup quarterback in its opener.
48.5 point favorite, Texas Tech. You're not worried about that line, John?
Not at
Kent
all.
State's 1-0, in case you
Yeah,
haven't
I know it
noticed.
is. It
Oh,
beats
you've
something
noticed.
called Merrimack, which sounds kind of like a county fair.
The Merrimack had caverns down in the St. Louis area. I'm a native Midwesterner. We went to the Merrimack Caverns, as I
Really, I didn't know
recall,
where
as a
I didn't know where it was.
I don't know if that's where the university is. I just know there's a cave down there and there's some caverns that we visited. I don't maybe that's where the university is down in down
Well,
in those caverns.
well, let me caution you. There appears to be a danger of getting a fungus from bats in caves now. So
Huh.
don't go back there.
I wasn't planning on it, but I'll take that advice to heart there and stay away from Merrimack College and Merrimack Caverns. Maybe the college is in the caverns. Not sure. Maybe we'll find out next week. We'll find out how we do on our picks. Thanks for listening to this edition of SEC Football Unfiltered.